Hey everybody, welcome to the Disney Q&A. This is the series in which you all send me your questions regarding all manners of Disney, whether it's the park or the history or the games or anything like that, and I try to answer them to the best of my ability. As always, we are exploring MC Magic, the one-to-one scale recreation of Disney World, while answering these questions, and I've got a bunch of really good ones. The first question that I'm going to cover actually was asked by, I don't know, virtually everybody. I think I got a good 10 to 15 questions regarding this subject, so I figured I'd just tackle this first and foremost. Shanghai Disneyland. Oh man, Disney came out with a whole bunch of details for Shanghai Disneyland. They showed a little concept video of Tomorrowland. They showed a lot of concept art. They sort of talked about what the parks are going to be like, what the different areas are, and a lot of people are wondering what I think about Shanghai Disneyland. And so Shanghai Disney looks really awesome. I love that they're doing things differently. I love that Tomorrowland is themed very differently from any of the other Tomorrowlands we've seen. And it's funny because it actually reminds me a lot of Tomorrowland in Disneyland Paris. Obviously, they don't look the same. They're not themed the same, but they are sort of themed based on a decision that is similar, which is that these are two cultures or parts of the world that didn't experience the sort of Norman Rockwell 1950s American sci-fi wave that we did. And that's what our Tomorrowland is based on. Our Tomorrowland is based on the Jetsons and what we thought the world of tomorrow was going to be like. But that whole phase of society did not hit, Europe. It did not hit Asia. And so they wouldn't relate to that. They wouldn't relate to that style. And that's why over in Disneyland Paris, you have more of a Jules Verne steampunk style future, which they can relate to. And here I think it's just more of a modern, sleeker look, sort of like the original idea of Tomorrowland, which is futuristic and everything looks cool. The Tron Coaster looks neat. It doesn't necessarily look exactly like what I would have wanted for a Tron Coaster, but then again, all we've seen are very short clips of CGI, really poor CGI videos, so who knows what the actual final product's going to look like. I think it's cool that they're putting something Tron there. It's completely unique to anything in any of the parks, really, so that's nice that they're not just copying everything. That said, I think the Tomorrowland preview is very indicative of sort of what you should expect from this park, which is that you have to remember, a theme park like the Magic Kingdom that we have today in Florida didn't start that way. It started a lot emptier than it is now, and it's been decades and decades of expansions that got us to the point that we're at. And the reason I mention that is because as far as we know so far, Tomorrowland and Shanghai Disneyland is 3 attractions. It's the Tron Coaster, this Buzz Lightyear adventure that we didn't really get to see, and then there's this, I think, Jetpacks, which is essentially like Astro Orbiter or Dumbo or any of those ride mechanics, and that's it. And I think that's a taste of what you're going to expect to see, which is you're not going to see a ton of attractions, and you never really would whenever the park's brand new like this. And it's going to have 2 hotels, it's going to have a shopping center. It looks really neat, and it looks like a park that I'm probably going to want to go and visit when it eventually opens in 2016. And I can't wait to see more details, which I imagine we'll get over at D23. Now, jumping into our first, I guess, singular question here, we have DMAC3600 who asks, do you think Disney will ever replace / fix Animal Kingdom's Expedition Everest Yeti? If you don't know, the Yeti is in B mode, which means it doesn't move and swing, and the reason that it's that way is because due to an engineering flaw, if it did that too much, it would damage the ride, and it would be catastrophically damaging, and so they turned it off, and from everything we've heard, in order for them to fix it properly, it would require a massive renovation of the ride. And so really, I think the go-to answer here is, yeah, they'll probably fix it one day, but they're going to wait for something like Avatar Land to be finished and open so that there's another big draw for crowds so that Animal Kingdom doesn't lose its only massive e-ticket attraction. But eventually, yes, I think it will. Moving on to the next question, we have Tiffany, aka Neonosaurus, who asks, do you think Disney should implement Disney hotels based off their rides? And if you could pick, which ride would you base a hotel off of? It's interesting because they kind of do that. They don't do it based on rides, but they've sort of originally did it on a theme, right? You had the Polynesian resort, which is supposed to be sort of a mirror of Adventureland. You had the Contemporary in Tomorrowland. You had the Grand Floridian, which kind of, I think you can argue, was very tied to like that Main Street old school style. And they were very, very loose connections. Obviously not an official connection, but I think they contain the spirit of those part of the parks. But if you're going to do like an advanced, like a specific ride, everyone said in the chat, like, not in the chat, in the comments, Tower of Terror, which sounds like a no-brainer because it's a hotel, but it's also a terrifying hotel, which is not really where I'd personally want to stay if I'm trying to get a good night's sleep. I would want to see something, I think, a little more futuristic. Maybe something like a Space Mountain or a Horizon. Why not use hotels to sort of be spiritual successors to retired rides? Make a Horizons hotel where some rooms are based on Seabase Alpha and they're like underwater rooms, and some are based in the desert where the farms are, at Mesa Verde, and then some of them are in space at Brava Centauri. I think that would be really cool, and that would be my answer now. Whenever I could find a reason to tie something into Horizons, I will tie it into Horizons. Our next question comes from Kevin Clinky, who says, I'm going to Disneyland in 2 weeks and I can't wait. I have a question. Why does Disneyland not have the magic bands and Disney World does? So he's talking about the magic bands, the little rubber wristbands that now act as your room key and your pass for the parks, and you could charge items on it. I don't know if they had announced plans to bring it over to Disneyland. I feel like I remember there being an article about that. That said, if they didn't, I would imagine it'll happen eventually. I think the reason you didn't see it open on both at the same time is because this was very new technology. It's a very new program, and it's very expensive to implement. You have to have all these trackers installed in all the attractions. You need to get a whole system put in place so that it can work with sales and hotel rooms and all of this. It's essentially, it's a very expensive endeavor. And for something that's so brand new that they're just testing out, they're not going to go ahead and full-blown put it everywhere. And they decided Walt Disney World would be the place to test it on, and they tested it. And I would imagine, since they're still using it, that the tests are going well. And so I would imagine that they're going to move it over. And again, they might have actually already announced it. I don't know if I'm making that up in my head or if it's just wishful thinking. But, you know, I can expect it to hit there eventually and to end up in Disneyland. It'd be nice if they did it within the next couple of weeks so I could use it at Disneyland and Disney World, but I imagine that probably won't be the case. Okay, next question is from Matthias Machado, who says, everyone knows Disney's Hollywood Studios is going to have a big reboot. Many attractions have been closed, but at the same time, some work has been done. Consider, for example, the removal of the hat and the revamp of the Great Movie Ride. It has also been confirmed that its name is going to change for a third time. If you could choose a name for the park, considering what the rumors are about its new lands, Star Wars Land and Toy Story, are true, what would you name it and why? Sorry, and thanks for the long question. No worry for the long question. Yeah, so they're going to change the name again. They're going to introduce all these new rides, and it is assumed it's going to be Pixar or Toy Story based, as well as Star Wars based. There have been like little rumors of like Indiana Jones stuff. And I think the big rumor is that they're going to name it Disney's Hollywood Adventure. That way you'd have Disney's Hollywood Adventure and Disney's California Adventure. I'd be okay with that, I guess. To be honest, I don't see a problem with Disney's Hollywood Studios. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The MGM name change made sense because their partnership with MGM ended, so they had to change their name. And I think Disney's Hollywood Studios made sense. I guess if we're using sort of antiquated ideas of, you know, a movie studio theme park, yeah, the park doesn't really fit within that mold anymore. But then again, would you even say that Universal Studios fits within that mold anymore? I don't think it does. And so I think we could just allow the meaning of the idea of a movie theater or a movie studio theme park to change and just keep Hollywood Studios. I'm okay with Hollywood Adventure. I don't think it should have anything specific to like a brand like Star Wars or Toy Story. It should be generic. I feel like this is all about movies and the movies. So, you know, I guess I can't really think of a better name for it. Things like names for theme parks are weird because I feel like no matter what, the name's going to sound weird at first, especially for something like this where it's already been using a name for so long. But then, you know, before long, it gets changed. And I remember people who were, when it changed from MGM, they were like, I'm going to call it MGM forever. And of course they didn't, because you just get used to the new name. And that just happens. That's beyond theme parks in general, too. I mean, we're in New York, and they tore down Shea Stadium and put up Citi Field, and everyone's, I'm going to call it Shea Stadium no matter what. Guess what? They didn't. They started calling it Citi Field because that's what it's called. And I think whatever happens to Hollywood Studios, whatever it's named, we'll end up calling it that. And I'm sure whatever it is, it'll be fine. And they're smart enough that they're not going to sort of pigeonhole them into a specific brand by calling it, like, you know, a Star Wars related name or anything like that. Anyway, on to the next question. We have Copycat705 who asks, what do you think of the $3 billion price tag that is rumored to be for the Disney Hollywood Studios revamp? What do you think can/will be coming that is not Star Wars or Pixar related? When will all this be open? Why am I asking so many questions? Thanks and have a great week. $3 billion price tag? Awesome. Awesome because the company's doing really well. They've got money to invest a proper amount of money to put these rides together in the right way is what I like to see. I would hate to see that number lower. And you know what? I'm not an expert on engineering. Maybe that number should even be higher. I don't, maybe not. $3 billion is a lot of money. It's more than some of these theme parks even cost as a whole. So if $3 billion is true, I think that's awesome. I think that means we're going to see some amazing quality come out of these parks. What do I think will be coming that's not Star Wars or Pixar related? Nothing. I think maybe we have a shot at seeing like an Indiana Jones thing later down the line, but I don't think we're going to see anything that's not Pixar or Star Wars related. And I'm okay with that. I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm a Pixar fan. I'm just super thrilled about Star Wars coming back. And so if all of this expansion was Star Wars only, I'd still be thrilled. When will it all be open? That's a great question. I imagine we're going to see some solid details at D23 this year. And then I imagine it'll be like a year or two before, you know, maybe it'll be a year when we start to see smaller things open up, and then 2.5 years before we start to see the bigger stuff open. You got to remember, Disney thinks long term, and they should think long term because that's the healthier way to look at it from a business perspective. Next question is from Bowie Badger, who asks, there's a rumor going around that Universal's deal with Nintendo has expanded into a brand new theme park based on video games as a whole. One of the video games rumored is World of Warcraft. With this new rumored park and the new water park that they're building, Universal is starting to look like an iconic Florida attraction, and this means that they could be a pretty big threat to Walt Disney World. What do you think? So there is a rumor going around that, well, basically everything Bowie Badger just said is rumored. That said, I looked into the rumor. It comes from one source who quotes an anonymous source, so really take it with a grain of salt. It could be totally fake. We have no way of knowing right now. Nothing official is on the table. That said, let's play make pretend. Make pretend. Make believe. Let's play make believe. First off, I would say that Universal's already an iconic Florida attraction. When you think, vacationing in Central Florida, you think Universal and Disney. I think Universal has earned that spot. I think if it grew this way, it would definitely take up more of a share of that spot, but I think it's already there. I think a theme park exclusive to video games would be amazing. I think that would be so great because it would be I think a significant mark in video games as a medium to show just how mainstream they've become, how widely accepted they've become. I think it's novel enough that it would sway a lot of people into checking it out. I certainly would. World of Warcraft makes sense because Universal is putting out the movie. And so, I don't know. We'll have to see. That would be really interesting. That would be pretty bold on their part. I would like to see it happen. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see if it does happen. Our next question comes from Blake Wood, who asks, I'm going to be on leave from the Navy in December, and my fiance and I want to go to Disney World. Is it better to go at the beginning of December or January? Also, with all the renovations to Hollywood Studios, do you think that it is now only a half-day park, similar to how Animal Kingdom was? So to answer your second question, because I think that's an easy answer, yeah, I do. I think a lot of the closures in Hollywood Studios has temporarily set it back into being the sort of half-day park that it was when it originally opened. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's certainly a bummer for people who are going at that time. I'm going to be one of those people. So, I definitely am bummed about some of that. But, at the same time, again, it goes back to an earlier question where long-term health is important for the Disney World as a resort and as a company. And so, I think it's okay considering we know they're going to be expanding it. If they were just closing stuff and then to cut, costs and then it just stayed cheap and like a half day park, that'd be kind of a bummer. But knowing that they're going to expand again is what's, I think, important. So your first question, beginning of December or beginning of January, I think, and I hope people in the comments are able to chime in and give their 2 cents, because I certainly don't think I'm an expert on this, but my guess would be beginning of December. It depends on how early in January you're talking. I've been down for New Year's, and I can tell you, Christmas time, places packed. New Year's, places packed. 2 or 3 days after New Year's, it really gets empty. So if you're talking like early January, like a week and a half into January, then I think that'd be a perfectly fine time to do it. I think early December, you've got all of the Christmas stuff is going to be up, so you'll have that to experience if you're into that sort of thing. Thanksgiving will be over, so hopefully the crowds will thin out a little bit. Again, it depends on how early in the month you're talking. Are we talking the day after Thanksgiving, or are we talking about like, a nice middle point between Thanksgiving and Christmas? Weather-wise, I think it's going to be pretty similar regardless of which you pick, although I think Florida natives can speak better to that. As a New Yorker, when I go down there, it seems all the same to me. And by the way, it all still seems like shorts weather, whether it's August or January, it always is shorts weather coming from New York. I think Disney, this is one of the places where you can't go wrong regardless, but I would guess December would be a nice one, especially you get all the Christmas decorations and stuff. So let's move on to the next question, which comes from B-Fish Alex Imagineering, who asks, do you think that the Animal Kingdom was premature in its creation and the Imagineers should have pushed the project back 5 years to a decade to further work on Hollywood Studios and Epcot? If so, what differences do you think we would have seen, or would you have liked to seen in Animal Kingdom? This is an interesting question. I like these sort of what-ifs because we can base it a little bit on history and then a little bit of guessing. I don't think Animal Kingdom was premature in its creation. I think it was at a point where it made sense to do. Disney was doing well financially. They had the money to put into it. It was making the parks a bigger draw. The problem was, after 9/11, the economy got rocky, tourism became rocky, and so a lot of the reason that the Animal Kingdom didn't develop the way it was originally intended to was sort of out of Disney's hands and completely unforeseen. Had they decided to push it back 10 years, they would have been doing so on a completely random whim. There would have been no indicators that they would have had these problems. There's a lot of talk about how there was going to be a whole part of the park based on these mythical creatures, and that ended up getting pushed off because of the economy. And so I don't think it was a bad idea. I think because of the economic issues that we ended up having in the early 2000s, had they pushed back Animal Kingdom 5 years, there's the distinct possibility that we just never would have gotten an Animal Kingdom. They would have canceled the project because, it would have been economically feasible, and then we just never would have gotten it. And then maybe today we would be talking about rumors about a fourth gate. So I think it's great that they made it when they did. I don't fully agree with all of the decisions on how they put like stopgap solutions to not having enough content there. In particular, Dinoland USA, I think so much of that area is just like really cheap in quality. And you can argue, okay, that's the story, is it's supposed to be like a carnival, but I don't like fully buy it. But I'm still glad that it exists because now they have something to grow from, and it was some rough times. But again, it all goes back to this central core of like, you need to think long term, and I think that's what Disney's doing and what Disney's smart about. So our next question comes from Lucario, I still don't know how to pronounce it, fan. Would you think that getting rid of living with the land would be a good thing for Disney? Man, that's tough. I'm an advocate for change in the parks, but I loved living with the land. I think the real question is, what would you put there? If you got rid of it, you need to put something in that space. And I think that space isn't a big canvas for another new exciting attraction. So I think whatever you put there is going to be similar in style. So that said, I'm all for a new attraction. I mean, I do revisiting Disney. I'm always all for a new attraction. But as long as it's in the same focus, I think that's fine. I do think there should be a ride about that. I think it's an important thing that we need to teach people about or keep people aware about. Is about just being, resourceful and renewable and trying to keep it clean because we only have this one planet. I know this is weird and going off on a tangent, but Recently, last week, we discovered, or NASA discovered, we didn't discover, but NASA discovered probably the closest planet we've ever found that is Earth-like. I think it's Kepler something b. It's a little bigger than Earth, and it's about as far away from a similar sun as Earth. And oh yeah, it's 1,400 light years away. And I think it was a great reminder that we're here now. We're stuck here for quite a long time. Definitely everybody watching this, in your lifetime, we're not going to land on another habitable planet. And so it's important that we take care of our planet. And I think something like Living with the Land sends that message. And so in order to replace it, I would want to make sure that message stays intact, because it's one that we need to teach people about. All right, I'm done being preachy. Let's move on to the next question, which comes from Julian Suarez, who asks, what's my favorite Disney fact or trivia? Also, what do you think about Disney banning selfie sticks? Oh, we covered the selfie sticks in the last episode. We know where we stand on selfie sticks. But what's my favorite Disney fact or trivia? I think initially I was trying to think of my favorite, and I thought it would be something that's like really unknown or really obscure. But I realized that would only be my favorite because it'd be an opportunity for me to, lord over people who look at all the stuff I know. No, I think my favorite Disney fact is that Roy Disney was all primed and set to retire, and then when his brother Walt passed away, he pushed off his retirement to complete Walt Disney World, or at least the first stage of Walt Disney World. And it's my favorite because, realistically speaking, he didn't have to do that. He could have written off Disney World as Walt's idea and say, without Walt, this idea can't happen, so we should scrap it, sell the land, retire anyway, use it as a natural point to step away from the company and just distance himself. But he didn't. He put off his retirement to make his brother's dream a reality and to try and get that done. And he himself died shortly after Walt Disney World opened. And I think the idea that he sacrificed, unknowingly, admittedly, but he sacrificed the remainder of his years to make his little brother's dream come true is just like a really touching fact, and that's why it's my favorite Disney fact. And that was apparently the last question this week for the Disney Q&A. I want to thank you all for the fantastic questions. As always, if you have a question that you would like answered, feel free to leave it in the comments below. Feel free to tweet them at me. I'm at RobPlays. Whatever you're doing this week, make the most of it because it makes it that much better. And I will see you all next time. Bye, guys.